This is the Solid Signal podcast for June 20th, 2022. And this week I'm talking a little bit about Disney. Now, I've picked on Disney in the past, and I've also said that, and historically I've been a Disney fan. You tend to pick on things when you are a fan because you really want them to succeed. And when you think that they're going in the wrong direction, you tend to want to say something. It seems to me that all of a sudden Disney is in a little bit of a situation, an unexpected situation. Let's put it that way. Disney has more wins than losses over time, and I think we agree on that. And a lot of classic animation and all of the Pixar stuff that has been done really well, and not to mention the Marvel stuff and the Star Wars stuff. And this is a company that just kind of delivers over and over again. But it seems like lately there's been a little bit of a stumble, and I don't know why you would say that is, but to me, at least from my point of view, I think that we've seen it. The turning point was probably all the way back 5 years ago when they released Star Wars: The Last Jedi, which is extremely polarizing. And I wrote in the Solid Signal blog at the time that it was really not Star Wars for me. It was Star Wars for the next generation. And I had mixed feelings about that because I really wanted Star Wars to be something for me, but I understand it had to kind of survive. Well, there was so much controversy that they went down another road with the next episode of the Star Wars movies and made that just nothing but real fan service, walked back a lot of the changes that were made in the previous version. And that didn't work so well either. So then they switched gears, and it seems like we will probably see another Star Wars film at some point in the future, but they moved on to Star Wars television, which has been, for the most part, much better received. But I don't really just want to talk about Star Wars. I want to talk about 3 cases lately when it seems like Disney just isn't doing it right. Before I start, I'm going to talk a little bit about a 4th one, and that's that Seeing Red, which was a Pixar film that generated quite a bit of controversy for some of its portrayals of what happens over time as young people grow up. And, I respect what Disney is trying to do there, and I realize that it did not hit for everybody, but I was just fine with it. It may not have been my particular type of entertainment, but I thought it was good, and I was marginally entertained. No, I'm going to talk about 3 other projects. First of all, let's talk about the Marvel Cinematic Universe. The Marvel Cinematic Universe, in my opinion, completely ran out of gas with Moon Knight. A lot of people liked Moon Knight. A lot of people thought that it was thought-provoking, and I just got bored, to be really frank. I just didn't care too much about it by the time it ended, and I just found it to be boring. And in a case where you always had some sort of a payoff with these Marvel little mini series in the past, this one seemed utterly disconnected to the cinematic universe at large, which is really just stretched too thin anyway. Well, they've continued that with Ms. Marvel. And, look, there's a lot to say positive about Ms. Marvel in a theoretical kind of sense. It's a landmark for representation, and that's good. That's a good thing. But I haven't even been tempted to watch it. I haven't been interested in the least, not because I don't think it's good, but just because I don't think it's aimed toward me, and because it's not must watch. Moon Knight proved that I don't have to see everything in the MCU in order to understand what's going on in the MCU. Because there's just so darn much of it, I wouldn't remember all of it anyway. I'm going to shift gears for a second and talk about Lightyear, the film that came out this past week, and sort of an origin story for the Buzz Lightyear character in the Toy Story franchises. And it's been suggested this was a rare flop for Pixar. That's harsh, but it certainly didn't make the kind of money that was expected out of it, not in the first week, and it wasn't terribly well received. It's ironic, I think, that if you look at Pixar, they do such a great job of making inanimate objects seem human that they don't seem to do as good of a job making human objects seem human, like the Lightyear character. I'll admit I haven't seen it. It's still in theaters. I'm not really doing that right now. But I read a lot of the reviews, and it's clear by the amount of money that it didn't make that it just wasn't a total slam bang hit for Disney. And finally, the 1-2-3 punch. Let's talk a little bit about Obi-Wan Kenobi. Obi-Wan Kenobi is something I think that we all kind of wanted to see. And sometimes it's better to want something than to have it, I think. In the desire to create something that wasn't what you expected, they created something that was so totally different as to be undesirable, so packed with little tiny bits of fan service that it spent too much time being uninterested to someone who's more of a casual watcher of this kind of thing. And on top of which, it really doesn't work with a lot of the connective tissue that exists there. It kind of, with something like Star Wars, there's so much attention paid to the continuity, to the canon, if you put it that way, that when something doesn't quite work, it just kind of sticks out. And they did a great job of tying the Obi-Wan character in episode 3 to the Obi-Wan character in episode 4, but yet when you're looking kind of in the middle, this new character doesn't quite seem like a midway point between the Ewan McGregor portrayal and the Alec Guinness portrayal. It just doesn't work. And I'm looking forward very much to this one being over. I've been largely uninterested. I haven't found anything about it that has really been must watch, even though I've been watching it. And in the end, it's really because you know where these characters end up. There isn't any real suspense here. Obi-Wan Kenobi isn't going to die. Princess Leia isn't going to die. Darth Vader isn't going to die. I mean, those things happen later, but not in this particular show. And it cuts down on the suspense and makes it overall worse. When you look at these three things at the same time, the disappointing performance of Lightyear, the fact that Ms. Marvel isn't really appointment television by anybody's imagination, and the fact that Obi-Wan hasn't been everything that maybe you wanted it to be, it says that Disney isn't really sure what direction that they want to go. There's such a big company that there's room for them to be kind of nichey and be putting out a lot of interesting stuff that doesn't appeal to everybody. They can do that. And there's also room for really mainstreamy stuff. But what it does seem like is in each of these cases, what they're relying on is, at this point, a decades old mythos, if you will, whether it's the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the Star Wars universe, or the Toy Story universe, that doesn't need to be fleshed out anymore. And when was the last time that you really found Disney starting a whole new kind of franchise in a way that was exciting and new and something they could build on for the last 20 years? And I think that long term, that's a problem. I think back to the 1990s when NBC spent so much money on preserving their ER and Friends kind of television properties that they ran out of money to develop new stuff. And I wonder if Disney is in the same boat. There's only so far you can stretch these things, the MCU and Star Wars and Toy Story, before it just begins to get old. And you have to let it rest. That was the thing that Paramount really learned. I mean, they had to let Star Trek rest for about a decade because of some licensing issues that meant it really was not super clear where Star Trek belonged on television or in movies, and they had to really kind of back it off somewhat. And by the time they came back, they built a demand, and they managed to come up with a series of shows that maybe not everyone is to everybody's taste, but they were completely different. And while relying on a lot of shared past stuff, they also thought, were kind of cool in their own way. And I'm sure at some point that's going to burn out too. I get that. But I'm talking more about Disney at this point. And my feeling with Disney is that they've gone as far as they can go with where they are, and they need to start developing new ideas, new things that can roll for the next couple of decades. If you're a kid now, what are you going to look back on fondly in 20 years? And that's what they should be working on. Anyway, just my opinion. I'm not a senior executive at Disney, and those folks probably know better than I do. But I guess we'll see in the coming years. That's about it for the Solid Signal podcast. I wish you all well. Do me a favor, leave a like, a subscribe, leave a comment wherever you get this podcast, and I will see you again next week.